We should all be worried about the worsening human rights situation in India.
Those who are not Hindu and particularly Christians are facing growing intolerance.
We as a Christian community can respect other faiths and identities. We must ask our partners to do the same.
And it is our duty to make sure that they stop, also in Manipur.
The European Union is back in the news. Last week, they were lecturing India on human rights. They were debating the situation in Manipur. And look what they're doing now. Hiring a bouncer. You heard that right. The European Union has hired a bouncer, the kind you see at clubs or bars. Just one difference though. This bouncer is not a human being. It's an entire country. This one, Tunisia. It's a country in northern Africa. It's a jumping point for migrants traveling to Europe. This map should help you understand. If you take a boat from Tunisia to Italy, it's 600 kilometers. So migrants from Africa often gather in Tunisia, and from here, they cross over to Italy. But Europe wants to stop this migration. So what are they doing? On Sunday, 3 European leaders flew down to Tunisia. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. They held talks with the Tunisian president and signed a deal. Now, the EU is calling it a comprehensive strategic partnership, but let's call it what it is, a bouncer for hire. Tunisia has agreed to strengthen its borders, to basically stop migrants from leaving for Europe. And what do they get in return? Money, a lot of it. EU leaders have promised more than $1 billion in aid. The specifics are not out, but you get the idea of this transaction. Europe pays Tunisia to keep migrants out. They don't want to get their hands dirty. Mighty Europe cannot round up and deport helpless people. That would be a human rights violation. So instead, they're outsourcing the job. They're asking Tunisia to do it. On paper, Brussels has refuted this charge. The EU president says it's all about tackling smuggling.
We need to crack down on criminal networks of smugglers and traffickers. They are exploiting human despair, and we have to break their reckless business model. So we will work with Tunisia on an anti-smuggling operational partnership.
How noble of Europe. They're not keeping migrants out, they're just concerned for their safety. Let's not kid ourselves here. The problem is not smuggling or trafficking. The problem here is race. Europe had no issues welcoming refugees from Ukraine. Around 8 million of them are registered in the EU. 8 million in just 500 days. Compare this to the numbers from Africa. Italy has reported, in fact, 75,000 migrants in 6 months. I'm not saying welcome all of them. After all, these are migrants, these are not refugees, so Europe can choose to resettle them or not. I'm saying be consistent. Practice what you preach about human rights. Do not outsource your crackdowns to other countries, because that's exactly what Europe has done. Tunisia may be a democracy on paper, but their president has a problematic track record. He's jailed critics and journalists. He's increased the powers of his office, and he's also reduced the parliament to a rubber stamp. What has the EU said about all of this? Well, in 2021, they had a lot to say. The European Parliament accused Tunisia of cracking down on freedoms. But I guess that's all in the past. Under this deal, Tunisia will take back only their migrants, meaning Tunisians. What about the rest? People from all over Africa and even Asia gather here to migrate. Take a look at what Tunisia does to them.
In Tunisia, the police arrested us, beat us, and took our phones and all our money. They told us to go to Libya, and my people kept saying that Libya is very bad, but they left us without food and water. They put us there and then left.
As we tried to enter the Tunis again, they now beat us badly. They now broke this my hand, or my head. They now tear it. That's what happened.
So that's what Tunisia does to migrants, and pretty soon they will get paid for it. $1 billion check to keep migrants out of Europe. The UK is doing something similar. They signed a special deal with Rwanda. Under this deal, the UK would send asylum seekers to Central Africa. Rwanda would host them. In return, the British government agreed to pay the Rwandan government. It was so cruel, even British courts disagreed. They called it unlawful. Now imagine if some other country had done this, say in Asia, or in Latin America. The criticism would have been unrelenting. The European Parliament would have debated it. But now there is silence, not a word of criticism against this racist policy. And that's what it is, racist. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen called it shared prosperity. What exactly are they sharing? Most of Africa was colonized by Europe. Their plunder and persecution is partly responsible for Africa's troubles today. If anything, Europe should be paying reparations. They should take in more people. Instead, they've hired a bouncer. Next time Europe lectures someone, remember this deal. Just point them towards Tunisia.